parents beat me at my brother's birthday party with a champagne bottle. Why? Because I wouldn't hand over the deed to my $500,000 condo. And that wasn't even the worst part. My name is Camille Rivera, and I turned 32 this past spring. If someone told me I'd be hit with a champagne bottle at my brother's birthday party, I would have laughed. But that's exactly what happened, and not by some stranger or drunk guest, by my own parents. It was supposed to be a celebration, a big, glamorous dinner party in Scottsdale for my brother Julian's 40th. The kind of party where the wine flows like water and the guest list is longer than the dessert table. I arrived in my navy dress, hair pinned back, holding a carefully wrapped gift. Nothing flashy, just a pen set I had monogrammed with Julian's initials. I wasn't trying to impress anyone, just show up, be polite, and maybe feel like part of the family again. But the second I stepped out of my car, I felt it. That shift in the air when you realize you're not really welcome, just tolerated. My name wasn't on the guest list. Not as family, anyway. I was listed as a +1 under the Rivera family block, like some afterthought. I told myself not to take it personally. I'd done that enough times already. I smiled through introductions, pinned the generic name tag to my dress, and tried to pretend the tightness in my chest was just nerves. But it only got worse. The whispers, the distance, the seat in the far corner by the kitchen. Still, I stayed. I sat. I clapped when everyone else clapped, and then came the moment, the ask, the setup. And when I said no, just one word, soft but firm, they hit me. Not with anger, with strategy, with performance, with a bottle. I tried to shake it off, the way they listed me as a guest, not a daughter. I told myself it was probably some mistake. Maybe the planner messed up, or someone forgot to double-check the chart. But deep down, I knew better. When I walked into that house, every detail screamed intentional. The music, the lighting, the way people looked right through me like I was just another +1 they'd never have to remember. I made my way through the crowd with small nods and half smiles. No one stopped me. No hugs. No, good to see you. Just air kisses and distracted glances. The ballroom was stunning. Chandeliers glittering like icicles, silk tablecloths, champagne flutes lined up like crystal soldiers. I scanned the place cards and found mine, table 18, tucked behind a thick pillar next to the kitchen door. Out of sight. Out of frame. I sat down slowly, adjusting my chair. The napkin was folded into a swan, but it had drooped, like even it didn't have the energy to stand up straight. I reached to fix it. It flopped forward. I let it be. The table stayed half empty the entire night. The seat next to me was never filled. No one noticed. No one cared. From my spot, I could hear laughter echoing from the front, the pop of corks, the polished speeches. Julian was the center of it all. Hands were on his back, kisses on his cheek, toasts lifted in his name. Our golden boy. My parents, Marlene and Gerald, stood beside him like proud royalty. I watched them beam as if nothing was broken, as if the child they cast aside hadn't shown up quietly in the corner. I took a sip of water and stared at that limp little swan on my plate. And I knew. I wasn't just forgotten. I was erased. I didn't expect to be called on. I really didn't. I thought I'd spend the evening politely invisible. Smile, clap, eat a little salmon, and slip out before dessert. But then the lights dimmed, and a voice over the microphone said, "And now, a few words from someone very special to us, Camille Rivera." For a second, I froze. My name echoed through the room like it didn't belong there. People turned their heads. Some clapped. Some just looked confused. I stood, unsure, smoothing my skirt with shaky hands. No one had told me I'd be speaking. I hadn't written anything. I didn't even know what I was walking into. As I made my way to the small stage, I caught sight of Marlene's face. Her smile, too bright, too tight. Behind me, a screen flickered to life. It was a tribute reel, but not for me. For Julian. Baby pictures, sports trophies, awards, architectural drawings, him shaking hands with city officials, a polished montage of his greatness. Then came the narration. My mother's voice first, talking about Julian like he was heaven sent. Then my father's, adding phrases like natural-born leader and gift to our family. I stood there smiling because I didn't know what else to do. No mention of the $80,000 I wired Julian when his startup was collapsing. No sign of the weekends I worked overtime just to help cover bills when their mortgage was overdue. It was like I'd never existed. When the video ended, the applause rose again. Then Marlene took the mic and said, "And now, Camille, our ever-thoughtful daughter, has a surprise for her brother." I blinked. She looked at me like I should know what that meant. I didn't. Then she said it. "Wouldn't it be the perfect gift if you handed them the condo key tonight?" At first, I thought I misheard her. I looked at her, confused, then glanced at Julian. He wasn't smiling. He was staring down at his plate like he wished he could disappear. Marlene kept going, her voice sugary and light, like this was all some sweet surprise. "You know," she said, turning to the crowd. "Camille's always traveling for work. That condo in Phoenix, it's just sitting there. And Julian and Haley are newlyweds. It only makes sense, right?" My father chimed in from his seat, loud and booming. "Come on, Cam. You don't need all that space. It's a gesture of love, a formality." The room got quiet in that awful, unnatural way, like air being sucked out all at once. A few people laughed nervously. Someone's fork hit a plate. I leaned into the mic and said softly but clearly, "This wasn't agreed on." That's when it really shifted. Gasps, a few awkward coughs. Some eyes widened, others looked away. Marlene waved her hand like I was being dramatic. "Sweetheart, it's just a symbol. Don't make it a thing." But I could feel it in my chest, that tight, searing heat that comes when you're being pushed into a corner with a smile. Every cell in my body screamed for me to list every loan, every bill I paid, every sacrifice I made. But I didn't. I just stared at her. And in that stare, I saw it. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment ask. This was rehearsed, calculated. She was counting on me folding. I set the mic down. It thudded softly. My hands trembled as I stepped off the stage. I didn't even get 3 steps before I saw him. My father, standing by the dessert table, holding a bottle. And in his eyes, there wasn't confusion. There was rage. I wish I could say I saw it coming. But nothing prepares you for the moment your own father lifts a champagne bottle and swings it at your head. 1 second he was just standing there, stiff and silent. The next, the base of that bottle cracked against the side of my temple. It didn't knock me out completely. It was more like a white flash that wouldn't fade. My knees buckled, my vision blurred, and I felt warmth running down my cheek. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "Did he just hit her?" But no one moved. Not one person reached for me. My mother stood behind him, sipping from a glass like this was all just inconvenient. "You ungrateful little brat," she hissed. "We gave you everything." My hand shot up to the side of my head. There was blood. My pale blue dress, chosen carefully to look soft, non-threatening, was streaked with red. My cousin Jonah, the one who always smelled like motor oil, shouted, "Somebody call the cops!" But even he didn't come toward me. I straightened slowly, legs trembling, ears ringing. The pain was real, but the shame, that hit deeper. I looked around that crowded room full of people who'd watched it happen, who did nothing. Julian sat frozen at the head table, still looking at his plate. Haley stared ahead like she wasn't even there. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just walked. Through the stunned crowd, past the clinking glasses and fake smiles, out the door and into the quiet night. No one followed. I called an Uber with blood crusting on my jawline. When the driver pulled up, he looked nervous. "You okay, Mom?" he asked. I said the only thing I could manage. "Hospital." And then I shut the door. The ER was cold. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, too bright, too clinical. I filled out my own intake form with one hand, while the other pressed gauze to my temple. The nurse didn't ask too many questions. She just nodded gently, like she'd seen this kind of thing before. "Anyone coming to pick you up?" she asked. I shook my head. Number just me. Her look said more than her words ever could. "You're not the first." I laid back on that narrow cot and stared at the ceiling tiles, off-white and scrubbed to a sterile shine. That's when it hit me. Not just the pain, but the full weight of it all. I was done. Done showing up for people who only saw me as useful. Done explaining myself to a family who rewrote history to erase me. When I got back to my friend Leah's house that night, she'd left a towel and tea out in the guest room. I didn't touch them. I just collapsed onto the bed, fully dressed, shoes still on, and stared into the dark. The next morning, sunlight crept through the linen curtains like nothing had happened. My head throbbed with every heartbeat. I reached for my phone. No calls, no texts. Not from Julian, not from my parents. Just notifications from social media. Someone had posted the video. A shaky clip. Me stumbling after the hit. A burst of red blooming on my temple. I deleted it, then deleted it again. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I needed something normal. So I reached for my purse to check for my spare condo key, the one I always kept in the side pocket, just to feel grounded. But it wasn't there. My wallet? Yes. Lip balm? Yes. Crumpled receipts? All present. But the key was gone. That's when the second wave of dread hit, and this one cut deeper. A week earlier, after a quiet family dinner in Westlake, my dad had, accidentally, taken my bag home. He said he mistook it for my mother's, handed it back the next day with a sheepish grin and a casual shrug. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it, but now, staring at the empty side pocket where my condo key should have been, my gut twisted. Before I could spiral too far, my phone vibrated. "Unknown number," I answered on instinct. "Hi, Ms. Rivera," a cheerful voice chirped. "This is Jeanette from Valley Oak Realty. Just confirming the 2 p.m. walkthrough at your Phoenix condo. Should we meet at the entrance, or will you be using the lockbox?" I froze. "I didn't schedule a walkthrough," I said. Silence. Then some shuffling on her end. "It's under your name," she replied, sounding suddenly unsure. "But a Mr. Gerald Rivera is listed as co-signer." My blood ran cold. "Cancel it," I said. I hung up before she could respond. I sat at the edge of the bed, phone in one hand, the other gripping the blanket like it might keep me from falling apart. My parents hadn't just humiliated me. They were trying to erase me, piece by piece. I opened my laptop and typed out an email to the only lawyer I could think of. Subject: urgent. Property interference. I kept it short. Reminded him we met at a brunch last fall. Told him I believed my parents were trying to steal my home. I hit send, grabbed my keys, and called a locksmith. By noon, I was standing outside my condo in the hot Arizona sun, staring at the front door like it might not be mine anymore. The locksmith glanced at the scratches near the handle and shook his head. "Someone's been using this," he said. "Recently, I told him to change the locks. All of them. Add a deadbolt too, just in case." He nodded and got to work, his toolkit clinking softly while I leaned against the hallway wall, arms crossed, heart still racing. The scratches near the doorknob weren't from a break-in. They were too careful, too controlled. This wasn't a stranger fumbling with tools. This was someone who had access. Someone who used it like they belonged. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my living room couch, lights off, the faint smell of metal and lubricant still hanging in the air. I heated up some leftover soup, took 2 bites, and gave up. My body was still, but my mind wouldn't shut off. Then, around 7:30 the next morning, my phone buzzed. It was an email from my mother. Subject, "Let's talk." The message was short. "We love you. This has gone far enough. Please come by the house today. Just us. No drama. Let's fix this." I stared at it. For a moment, something inside me, some old, rusted piece, wanted to believe it. That maybe, just maybe, they regretted what happened. That maybe they wanted to apologize. But I knew better. Still, I went. By 2:15, I was parked outside the same house where my father had once read bedtime stories and my mother used to braid my hair. The porch looked perfect. Fresh flowers in ceramic pots, a spotless welcome mat. Marlene opened the door before I could knock. "Camille, baby," she said, pulling me into a hug that felt 3 degrees too cold. "Thank you for coming." I stepped inside. The living room had been staged like a photo shoot. Orchids on the coffee table, tea and cookies on a tray, framed photos that hadn't seen daylight in years. And on the couch? Julian. Silent, waiting. I didn't sit. Something about the room felt off. Too perfect, too rehearsed, like they were playing a part and I'd missed the script. Julian sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped, his eyes darting anywhere but mine. "Just us," Marlene said again, gesturing to my old favorite chair. "We wanted to clear the air." That's when Gerald walked in, holding a manila envelope. He smiled like this was all a business deal, not a family meeting. "We've been thinking," he said calmly, "about how to avoid more misunderstandings. We drafted something up." He handed me the envelope like it was a gift. I opened it slowly. Inside was a legal document. Heavy paper, formal font, title at the top, deed transfer agreement. I didn't react right away. I just flipped to the signature line, then looked up. "You're asking me to sign over my condo?" I said, voice low. Marlene folded her hands in her lap, her smile tight. "It's just paperwork, sweetheart. You don't need all that space alone." Gerald added, "Don't you trust us?" That last line did it. I set the document down carefully on the coffee table, just left of the untouched teacup. "You staged this like a reconciliation," I said, "but it's not. It's theater." The room fell silent. Even Julian looked up. For once, he actually looked at me. "This isn't about property," I continued. "It's about control, about what I'm worth to you when I say no." I took a slow breath, glanced once more at the room full of fake warmth, and stepped back toward the door. "I'm not signing anything," I said quietly. "Not now. Not ever." And with that, I turned and walked out. No one followed, not even my shadow. The next morning, I didn't wake to sunlight or the smell of coffee. I woke to silence, the heavy kind that settles in your chest. I sat at the kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a cup of tea I hadn't touched. At 9:32 a.m., I walked into Brian Mendoza's office downtown, where he was already flipping through a folder. "They've made a mess," he said, "but here's the good news. You still legally own the house your parents are living in." I blinked. "Seriously?" He nodded. "You bought it in 2011. Foreclosure rescue. They never transferred it back. It's yours." I leaned back in the chair, letting that land. I had given them a safety net, and they'd tried to turn it into a snare. Brian looked at me, waiting. I didn't hesitate. "Let's move forward," I said. "File everything." That same day, he submitted the notice to vacate. No drama, no phone call, just paper. 3 days later, the sheriff delivered the eviction order. I didn't go. But Julian did what he always does. He filmed it. A grainy security cam clip sent to the family group chat. Gerald opened the door, holding toast in one hand, blinking at the officer like he didn't understand English. Marlene stood behind him in a robe, mid-sip, frozen. The officer handed over the envelope. Gerald read it, slapped it against the wall, then stormed out of frame. I watched the video once, then shut it off. That night, I sat alone in my condo. No lights, no TV, just a cup of chamomile tea and the kind of silence that doesn't hurt anymore. The kind that wraps around you, not to isolate, but to protect. It wasn't revenge, it was release. And for the first time, I didn't brace for what came next. I just breathed. A few days later, a cream-colored envelope arrived in the mail. Thick paper, cursive handwriting across the front. I knew it was from Haley before I even opened it. Inside was a baby shower invitation, simple, tasteful, and at the bottom, in smaller script, one line. "I'm sorry. I didn't know how far they went. You deserved better. No excuses, no explanations, just that. And somehow, that small truth lifted a weight I didn't realize I was still carrying. I didn't respond. I didn't go. But I did write a check to the local women's shelter that afternoon. In the memo line I wrote, "In honor of a new beginning. Some cycles don't need fire to end. Some stories don't need dramatic closure. Sometimes it's enough to choose peace and keep walking." That night, I made dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta with garlic and thyme. I set 2 plates, not out of habit, but with intention. My friend Ariel arrived right on time, arms full, a bottle of wine in one, and a tiny orchid in the other. "You need more green in here," she smiled, placing it by the window like she belonged. We talked, we laughed, we built something new from something broken, and as I looked at the little swan napkin still resting on my table, soft and imperfect, I understood. Healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just choosing your own seat at the table. If you've ever had to let go of people to hold on to yourself, just know you're not alone. And if this story made you feel something, share it, speak up, or simply follow along. Because sometimes strength looks like walking away, and sometimes it looks like staying, but only for yourself.